public humiliation, and a new beginning. The story that made me stronger. I'll never forget the day my life changed completely. I was sitting on the living room couch trying to ignore the noise from the kitchen when I heard laughter and hurried footsteps. Suddenly, the door opened and everyone shouted, "Surprise!" It was my 49th birthday. What was supposed to be a happy moment turned into the worst nightmare of my life. Confetti flew through the air, but all I could feel was emptiness. Patricia, my wife, was beaming, not with love, but with the satisfaction of publicly humiliating me. She handed me an envelope with the divorce decree, while her parents, Paolo and Vanessa, laughed as if it were a show. My heart felt like it was shattering inside my chest, and a wave of anger and disbelief washed over me. My hands trembled, my stomach churned, and the feeling of being betrayed and exposed to public shame was suffocating. But deep down, a calm voice reminded me that I'd known about the betrayal for months, and that I wouldn't be caught off guard. My name is Fernando, I'm 49 years old, and until that moment my life seemed peaceful. I had 2 children, Enzo and Valentina, and a marriage that, on the surface, seemed solid. I'd worked for years trying to build emotional and financial stability for my family, never imagining that behind closed doors, my wife was plotting my destruction. Discovering she was having an affair with her sister Juliana's ex-boyfriend was a shock. The feeling of betrayal was indescribable, a mixture of shame, anger, sadness, and helplessness. Every detail I uncovered felt like a blade slicing through my confidence and self-esteem. However, as intense as the pain was, a flame of determination began to ignite within me. I knew I couldn't let that moment define my life, but I still felt the crushing weight of humiliation. My breathing was heavy, my mind was spinning, and all I wanted to do was scream or cry, but I held my ground, trying to maintain my dignity amidst the chaos. When they realized I wouldn't break down, the situation became even more tense. I had proof of Patricia's infidelity, text logs, photos, and everything that confirmed the betrayal. The shock on her face, and that of her family when I revealed I knew everything, was almost satisfying, but it wasn't just revenge I felt. It was justice. My mind was focused on not allowing myself to be a victim anymore. I also revealed that the house, which they assumed still belonged to me, was no longer in my name. I legally transferred it to my children, Enzo and Valentina. That seemed small compared to the magnitude of the humiliation I suffered, but it symbolized my control over my own life and protection for my children. Feeling like I finally had a plan, even a simple one, brought a sense of power I hadn't experienced in a long time. My eyes burned, my chest felt tight, but there was clarity. I wouldn't be destroyed by anyone. In the following days, the emotional battle was intense. Patricia and her family tried to manipulate me, to shame me again, but I stood firm. The fear of not being able to handle the chaos that followed was constant. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, feeling my heart race and my stomach churn with every memory of the party, the laughter, the humiliation. I even considered giving up, surrendering to sadness and isolation, but the presence of my children pulled me back. Every time I looked at Enzo and Valentina, I felt an immense responsibility to show strength and resilience. It was a mixture of anger that wanted to explode and a deep love that kept me going. Little by little, I began to realize that this pain could become a learning experience. I needed to rebuild myself, but I still didn't know exactly where to begin. Each day was a challenge, but I couldn't allow humiliation to be the last word in my story. It was in this whirlwind of emotions that I began to plan. I knew the legal battle for divorce would be complex, but I was ready. I hired lawyers, organized evidence, and documented everything. The process wasn't just about dividing assets or ironing out legal details. It was about restoring my dignity and ensuring my children wouldn't be affected by their mother's toxic behavior. Every meeting, every piece of paperwork signed, every decision made was a step toward freeing myself from an abusive relationship that had consumed me for years. Deep down, I felt fear, yes, but also a growing determination. I wanted to show myself and the world that even after being betrayed, humiliated, and manipulated, it was possible to bounce back. The feeling of butterflies in my stomach mixed with the adrenaline of small victories was strange, but invigorating. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own story, and that the future, though uncertain, could be rebuilt with dignity and courage. In the first few days after the party, every step inside the house felt strange and heavy. I looked at the furniture, the paintings, every detail I'd shared with Patricia, and felt a mixture of nostalgia and revulsion. The memory of her smile as she handed me the divorce fell like a weight on my chest, and for several nights I woke up sweating, feeling a tightness in my throat that left me breathless. At the same time, there was a controlled rage that drove me not to give in. I needed to survive emotionally and protect my children. Remembering that the house was now in Enzo and Valentina's name gave me a sense of relief. They would be safe while I struggled to rebuild myself. Each step I took was painful, but it carried meaning. I would no longer be manipulated or humiliated. The physical sensation of this mixture of fear, anger, and determination was palpable. My heart pounded, my hands trembled, but my mind was alert and focused. The following weeks were a test of emotional endurance. Patricia and her family tried to provoke me, send passive-aggressive messages, and create legal and emotional conflicts, but I learned not to react impulsively. Each attack was a reminder of how toxic the relationship had been, and the need to remain calm to avoid making matters worse. I spent hours reviewing documents, organizing evidence, and planning every step of the legal battle. But I also needed to find time for myself. Walks, runs, and simple moments with my children helped me regain my balance. I realized that the rebuilding process wasn't just legal, but also emotional and physical. Anger needed to be channeled, and pain needed to be felt, but not allowed to overwhelm me. I still cried alone, but each tear made me stronger. The hardest part was dealing with the profound feeling of betrayal. Knowing that someone you've shared years of your life with was plotting to destroy you is devastating. But it was precisely this pain that gave me the clarity I needed to move forward. I remembered the little things that made me happy before the chaos. Cooking with my children, our laughter during movies, the stories we made up to entertain ourselves, and these memories became anchors. I clung to them to keep from getting lost in resentment. Each day was a challenge, but also an opportunity to remember that I deserved better. Gradually, the feeling of helplessness began to diminish, giving way to the realization that I could decide my own destiny. Amidst this turmoil, there were moments of intense doubt. I even thought the entire battle would be futile, that the public humiliation would be permanent, and that perhaps it wasn't worth fighting. But looking at Enzo and Valentina changed everything. Their confident gazes and the way they sought me out for a hug or a conversation reminded me of why I needed to resist. It wasn't just about me. It was about protecting my family's dignity and showing my children that even in the face of betrayal and humiliation, there is a way to rise up with strength and courage. This motivation fueled me. Through the darkest days, transforming fear into action and pain into determination. It was during this period that I learned the importance of planning and acting strategically. I discovered that responding impulsively would only reinforce the toxic behavior of Patricia and her family. Instead, I documented every conversation, organized evidence of the betrayal, consulted lawyers, and sought emotional counseling. Each step I took was accompanied by nervousness, but also by a growing sense of impersonal justice. I realized that rebuilding my life didn't mean erasing the past, but using each experience as a tool to create a safer and healthier future. Gradually, a sense of control began to return, and with it, the hope that one day the intense pain would become just a memory, not the defining characteristic of my life. The divorce began to unfold, and with it came a new kind of stress. It wasn't just dealing with lawyers and paperwork, but facing the gaze of people who had previously judged me without knowing the truth. Every meeting with Patricia and her family was a test of patience. Each provocation from them reminded me of the humiliation I'd suffered at the birthday party. My body reacted automatically, heart racing, cold sweat, trembling hands. But I learned to breathe deeply and maintain my composure. There were days when I felt exhausted, wanting to give up and hide from the world. But I looked at my children and felt a responsibility to show resilience. They were my anchor, my reminder that I needed to transform pain into action and anger into strength. During this period, I discovered the importance of seeking emotional support. I talked to trusted friends, joined online groups, and read stories from people who had also experienced betrayal and traumatic divorces. Each shared story helped me realize I wasn't alone, that the pain was real but surmountable. The feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming, but accepting that I needed help was liberating. My mind began to clear, and I realized I could make decisions with more calm and confidence. I began to plan my days with discipline, time for work, childcare, and self-care. I discovered that small daily victories, being able to stay calm, give my children my full attention, organize documents without falling apart, gave me the energy to keep fighting. At the same time, I had to deal with the anger that insisted on consuming me. There were nights when the room seemed to spin, and I felt like screaming, breaking everything, and impulsively retaliating. But I learned that anger needed to be channeled, not repressed, and I found ways to vent it, exercising, running, writing down everything I felt in a notebook. Every written word, every sweat I shed helped release the accumulated tension and clear my mind. Gradually, I began to realize that I was no longer reacting to provocations. I was acting strategically. This sense of control over my own emotions and decisions was one of the most important achievements of this period. One of the most memorable moments was realizing the strength of my bond with my children. Enzo and Valentina became my allies, my motivators, and their every gesture reminded me of the value of my struggle. Playing with them, listening to their stories, teaching them little life lessons, all of this took on a much greater meaning. Each of their smiles filled me with a strength I didn't know existed. Even in the face of chaos, I found moments of genuine and simple happiness, which showed me that it was possible to feel joy even after so much pain. This bond became the foundation on which I rebuilt my self-esteem and confidence. Over time, I began to notice small internal changes. I was no longer the broken and humiliated man at the party. I was becoming someone capable of facing challenges, protecting my family, and maintaining my dignity. The feelings of fear and anger still existed, but they no longer dominated my actions. Each legal victory, each strategic step taken, each moment of connection with my children reinforced that overcoming was possible. The rebuilding process was not linear. There were bad days, emotional setbacks, and persistent fears, but each obstacle overcome made me feel stronger and more confident. I began to see that intense pain could be transformed into learning and growth. As the divorce proceedings progressed, I realized the battle wasn't just legal, but emotional. Patricia and her family kept trying to get to me, whether with subtle provocations, comments on social media, or veiled threats. Each interaction was a test of patience and self-control. My body reacted immediately. Tension in my shoulders, irregular breathing, a racing heart. But instead of reacting, I learned to pause, analyze the situation, and calmly decide my next step. I discovered that true strength lay not in yelling or returning the humiliation, but in maintaining my dignity intact, even when everything around me seemed to conspire against me. This realization completely changed the way I dealt with conflict. There were moments of intense doubt when everything felt too heavy. I remembered the birthday party, Paolo and Vanessa's cruel laughter, Patricia's expression of satisfaction as she handed me the divorce. The feeling of humiliation haunted me like a ghost, and my mind insisted on reliving every painful detail. It was at that point that I realized I needed to make decisions that went beyond the moment. It wasn't just about responding to the betrayal, but about rebuilding my life, ensuring emotional security for my children, and regaining my own self-esteem. Every step, no matter how small, became crucial to my recovery. I found strength in the small, everyday achievements. Being able to stay calm during tense conversations, organize documents without panicking, spend quality time with Enzo and Valentina without letting the stress of the divorce overwhelm me. These small victories gave me clarity that I was in control of my life again. At the same time, I learned to recognize and accept my vulnerabilities. Crying alone, feeling fear or anger didn't make me weak. It made me human. This acceptance was transformative, as it allowed me to manage my emotions consciously and healthily, without letting them dictate my actions. In the midst of all this, I began to rediscover myself as an individual. I rediscovered my tastes, my priorities, what made me happy outside of my marriage. I began dedicating time to hobbies I'd neglected, to studying, to taking care of my body and mind. Each small step of self-care was an affirmation that my life could have meaning and joy even after so much pain. The feeling of lightness that came from these moments was unlike anything I'd felt before. It was freedom. Gradually, I realized that I didn't need the approval of Patricia or her family to be happy, that my happiness depended solely on my choices and actions. My children's support became my greatest fuel. Enzo and Valentina were my motivation to get up every day, face my fears, organize documents, and strategically plan every step of the legal battle. Every hug from them, every word of encouragement, every shared smile strengthened my resolve. Knowing that my fight was protecting those I loved most was an indescribable feeling, a mixture of responsibility, deep love, and hope. For the first time after months of pain and humiliation, I felt that life could be rebuilt with dignity, courage, and love. Each challenge I faced brought me closer to a stronger, more resilient, and self-aware version of myself. Over time, the tension and chaos began to ease. Patricia and her family realized they could no longer manipulate me, and I began to feel a huge weight lift from my chest. Every decision made, every document signed, every small legal victory reminded me of the power I had over my own life. I felt pride in myself, something that had been crushed by years of betrayal, manipulation, and humiliation. I realized that the pain wouldn't disappear completely, but that I could live with it without being defined by it. This was a crucial lesson. The past may hurt, but it doesn't have to dictate the future. Enzo and Valentina continued to be my light in the darkness. With them, I learned that rebuilding isn't just about financial or legal stability, but about strengthening bonds and creating positive memories. Every simple moment, a meal together, a shared laugh, a sincere conversation became a silent but meaningful victory. Their presence reminded me that life doesn't end with betrayal. It continues, and we can choose how to live it. My body, which had previously reacted with fear and tension, now felt a different energy, confidence and determination. Every step I took was conscious, every decision made with clarity and purpose. Reflecting on everything, I realized that my overcoming was built on a combination of pain, courage, and love. It wasn't easy. There were nights of tears, moments of doubt, intense fear, and feelings of defeat. But each challenge I faced made me more resilient. I learned the importance of valuing myself, setting clear boundaries, and acting with emotional intelligence. I discovered that facing such a public betrayal requires patience, strategy, and above all, the courage to remain whole. Today, I know that even when we are humiliated, betrayed, or scorned, we can still choose to rise up and rebuild our lives. Now, looking back, I feel a mixture of relief and gratitude. Relief for not giving in to anger and despair, gratitude for having children who gave me strength, and gratitude for discovering a side of myself I never knew. I still feel bits of pain, but they no longer paralyze me. What seemed like the end has become a new beginning, and I realize that true victory lies not in revenge or punishment, but in regaining control of one's life, protecting those we love, and living with dignity. This process has taught me that it is possible to win, even when all seems lost. If I can share my story today, it's because I've learned that life can knock us down, but it also gives us the chance to rise stronger. It's not about erasing the past, but about learning from it, transforming pain into growth, and using each challenge as momentum for a better life. I continue to deal with some wounds, but each day I feel more whole, more confident, and more capable of facing whatever comes my way. This journey has taught me that even in the face of betrayal, humiliation, and chaos, it's possible to rebuild your life with dignity, courage, and love.